This episode is brought to you by Facebook. So you were scrolling on Marketplace, and there it was, the bike you'd been searching for. You sent a message, and it turned out the seller was super chatty, kind of funny, and an avid cyclist. The next thing you know, you're in a cycling crew. Well, a community cycling group. The thing about Facebook, you might find more than what you're looking for. From a browse to a bike ride, this summer find more on Facebook.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Captain Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. Today, I'm joined by our Congressional Impact reporter, Danielle Battaglia, to talk all about the big news in Congress. We're recording this but a little before noon on Monday, August 10th. Tonight, Republicans are going to choose a new candidate for the congressional district out west. So set this up for people who have been living under an NC poll rock the past week.
I feel like this is one of those moments that we think people know everything and they don't.
Not necessarily. Somebody told me this week that this is where they get their most up-to-date everything. So yeah, let's go.
So a week ago, I was minding my own business when news broke that the House Committee on Ethics found substantial evidence that Representative Chuck Edwards both sexually harassed 2 young female staffers and also created a hostile work environment. He was adamant he was not going to walk away from his campaign or the office. And then sometime overnight, I want to say it was Tuesday overnight at 3:30 a.m., he tweeted out, "I am not going to run for re-election." And so we are now waiting to see who takes his place.
So this happened pretty quick, sort of, as far as the not running again, but Edwards has not stepped down.
He's not stepped down. He's up for censure. And for people who don't know, censure in Congress means you go to the well of the House, which is the center front, and have the allegations read against you, which, to a lot of people, I think is a slap on the wrist, but it's a very humiliating situation for the congressman. I think it's only been done 28 times in our history. Some of that was you supported the Confederate Army during the Civil War, bad. That's when they got censured. Other people, it could be for a whole host of things like insulting another member. Clearly, we did that a lot more in the past than now. He can still be censured. It's not clear to me whether there was some deal struck to make him step down. I have no evidence of that, but it wouldn't shock me that if he had stepped down, they said they wouldn't censure him. No idea if that happened. I know there was pressure from Senator Ted Budd for him to, and when I say step down, I mean step down from the race, not from his office. But there was pressure for him to walk away from the re-election campaign from Senator Ted Budd. Speaker Mike Johnson was also involved in that pressure campaign, and he broke overnight.
What should people know about, there are a lot of documents associated with this report and the allegations and everything. What should people know that was in there? And what Edwards' response is to it all?
There was a lot in there. I think to me the most important things is what he did to or didn't do to his constituents. So he skipped a House vote to go decorate one of his employees' Christmas trees. He almost didn't make it back from Las Vegas, where he was on a trip with one of his employees. He almost didn't make it back in time to reopen the federal government, which is a huge deal. And then, we've also seen in his text messages that he was willing to cancel teletown halls to go on a date with one of these women. There's a lot more into it. We know he bought pink and blue handguns for a pink and a blue handgun for 2 different employees. He bought them jewelry. He bought them
ice cream.
30 different flavors of ice cream after one of them had a breakup. He bought one a trip with her friends to New York City, where he also paid for Hamilton tickets after she had a breakup. Another one got a trip to New York City with him. They were there for a political event, but then he added to that trip for a birthday party for himself where they went on helicopter rides, dates. I think they saw a show. So there's a lot to unpack in there. They also got designer bags and shoes. I love shoes.
So he's married, and these women are significantly younger than him.
He is around 65 years old. They're in their early 20s. He is married. As far as I know, he is still married to this day. There's a lot to unpack there.
So when would we know what Congress is going to do about the censure?
So they don't come back. The House doesn't come back till September 1st. At that point, they can take it up at any time. So clock starts ticking that day. And, he's in office till, I think, January 3rd. So they have till January 3rd to censure him. They do have to take a vote. So the House Ethics Committee has recommended him for censure. And they have to take that to the floor. They vote on whether to do that or not. There's a whole process there.
And go ahead. These are Republicans and Democrats.
Yes. Yeah, and we've seen both the House Democratic Women's Caucus, I don't think I have that name right, but them and the Republican version of that caucus both have come out and said that he deserves to be censured at the very least, if not expelled from office. And that is a possibility. You can go from censure to a more increased reprimand of expulsion. He could also be fined for it. The House has a lot of leeway on what they can do there. And I did not answer your question on his response to all this. Mm-hmm. He and his campaign advisors are saying he did nothing wrong. They said there was no proof that he had sexual relations with these 2 women. And so by, I guess, definition of the federal law, he did not sexually harass them. And that is what they're standing by.
Is anybody calling for him to step down at this point?
So since he has said that he would not run for re-election, I haven't seen a whole lot come out. I did see there was a couple women in Congress who called for him to step down and be expelled if he doesn't. A lot of what's going on with Chuck Edwards is being drowned out by the Max Miller scandal with Ohio. He's also he's alleged to have abused his child, his 2-year-old daughter, and his wife. And so that has taken more of the conversation in Washington because he is still running his campaign and, not backing down from anything.
So let's talk about, as soon as there was, Edwards said that he's not going to run, then it's who is going to run. And in the legislative building, there's a flurry of names flying around. Things shifted over this past weekend. Yeah. So let's talk about who the contenders are. Who are these top contenders that are already in elected office?
Currently?
Yes.
So right now we're looking at Representative Jennifer Balcom. She seems to be the overwhelming name that we're hearing over and over. It's interesting because there were a lot of people who thought about running. And so, you had people like Ralph Heiss, you had...
that would be a spruce pine Republican in the Senate.
You had Tim Moffitt. You had...
also in the Senate.
Who else do we have?
Jake
Kevin
Johnson
Corbin.
in the House, Kevin Corbin in the Senate.
And then, there's also names floating like Dustin Hall. I don't see that happening. He's House Speaker right now. You would lose 2 of your top... Actually, you would lose your 2 top Republicans in the legislature with Senator Berger not winning his re-election campaign. So, I just don't see that one happening, but that'd be a fun dark horse.
Hall talking to reporters after the last House voting session this past week mentioned that he's not in that district. Of course, you're not required to be.
You are not. I mean, that's another thing Jake Johnson said is I'm not in the district. I'm one district away or county away.
I think he said precinct.
Precinct,
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah.
And so he says he's not running, but technically he could. And I will say, so there are, I think, 60-ish people that are on the Republican Party's executive committee. This is the Republican Party from the 11th district. That's how our state law has this written. So if a primary's already happened and you're within a certain amount of days, which is confusing because our law is written kind of wonky on that, it goes to the North Carolina 11th Congressional District Executive Committee. And there's about 60 people who get to decide, and they could choose any name they want. And in North Carolina, you don't have to live in your district. So, I mean, we could go to the beach.
It probably helps campaigning if you're actually in the district and not, outside of it. So
I think we have like 2 or 3 that don't live in their district right now, though, but they live close. They live close by.
Well, maps don't always stay the same, I guess.
That's true, too.
Voting maps, actual maps stay the same. So, and the Republicans in the House we're looking at again are Jennifer Balcom and Jake Johnson. Republicans in the Senate are Moffitt and Heiss and Corbin, but things have shifted around. We're over the weekend.
There's
Moffitt
been a lot of
said
change.
He's out.
Moffitt was like overwhelmingly the person. I mean, if you had asked us Friday, and people did ask us Friday, we said it's going to be Moffitt. That is what we heard nonstop. I will say when you're in this situation, you are going through like a deep dive of all your personal life, your political life. They are going to your advisors are going to turn over anything they can find about you, and in a very short amount of time. And so who knows what happened with Representative Moffitt? It could just be he said, I want to keep the seat I have, and this isn't a sure thing. We have like, I want to say 80-ish days until the election at this point, and so this is going to be a very quick turnaround where, Jamie Ager, who's running on the Democratic ticket, he's got $2 million in his war chest, and everyone on the Republican side would be starting from scratch. And so there's a lot that goes into these decisions. Again, I don't know exactly why Moffitt decided to drop out, whether it was, the time frame, the amount of money he'd have to raise, his sure thing with where he is. There's so many different things, or, maybe they uncovered skeletons. I do not know that. Like, I'm just throwing that out as a possibility.
A statement said something about the timeline, or how if they want someone to be able to stick around for a long time.
It's a quick timeline. And so his name, he came out Saturday, said I'm not running. Maybe it was Sunday. He came out over the weekend, said I'm not running, which opened up a whole can of people who want to run. Jennifer Balcom's probably the most known on that list. You have Christian Reagan, who's run before for that district. You have Chad Nesbitt, I think is his name. I don't know him, but he's apparently well known in the community.
So it may not be a state lawmaker.
It could be. I mean, it would be a smarter play for Republicans not to pull in a state lawmaker, because that's going to have a ripple down effect where you're now trying to find nominees for all those seats that you have to take. So like there's a reason to not pick up those people who have an elected job, but there's also, the name notoriety that, is better to lean on if you want a Republican to win.
Okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Facebook. So you were scrolling on Marketplace, and there it was, the bike you'd been searching for. You sent a message, and it turned out the seller was super chatty, kind of funny, and an avid cyclist. The next thing you know, you're in a cycling crew. Well, a community cycling group. The thing about Facebook, you might find more than what you're looking for. From a browse to a bike ride, this summer find more on Facebook.
Fox News is streaming live on Fox One, bringing you the stories you won't hear anywhere else. Live coverage, sharp analysis, real perspective. Stream now.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with Danielle Battaglia, who is our Congressional Impact reporter. And there's a lot of impact going on with Congress now. Let's talk about this district that Edwards holds right now.
Yeah, so it's a highly Republican district. I think it's an R+5, which isn't one of our biggest Republican. I think it's more on the fence of being Republican, but if you're a Republican, you should win that district with an R+5. What's interesting about this particular race is like Chuck Edwards was not raising money. I think he had $135,000 that he raised last quarter. Incredibly low for our congressman. We're usually looking into the millions there. And then you've got Jamie Ager, who's got $2 million, like I said, in his war chest. He's been able to raise a lot of money. Polling wasn't looking good for Chuck Edwards. And so like, this is a district that political analysts have said we're no longer looking at this as leans Republican, but a toss-up, which is a big deal when it's drawn for you to win. Some of that had to do with polling, fundraising. Some of it had to do with the indiscretions that we had heard prior to the release of this House Ethic Report was coming. And so, again, Republicans have, it went from, we will absolutely win this to it's going to be a uphill battle for whoever takes it.
What are you going to be watching for these coming months, regardless of who, Republicans pick as that candidate? What are you going to be looking at? Just state of the race, kind of?
I mean, there's a lot to overcome. Their fundraising numbers is going to be huge. Polling is going to be huge. I'm not one that likes to look at polls a whole lot because, it's moment in time. It's a snapshot. But I think polling will give a bigger indication right now on this race than I usually use it for. I also think, they're going to have to get messaging out. One thing that I think is a factor in all elections is your connection to President Donald Trump. He's one that typically you want to have a connection with, but the people that he's endorsed lately aren't doing so well. And so it'll be interesting to see them thread that particular needle in this district, especially with Helene relief and things like that. The district both blames President Biden and President Trump for how the Helene recovery has been handled. I don't know where Chuck Edwards plays into that. He had great messaging that he was number one in getting them relief. What I'm hearing behind the scenes is that may not be the case. And so you've got to overcome that now and prove to the district that you can help in that arena. So I think there's a lot to watch with this particular district.
And Balcom has been, at the forefront of Helene and wanting all the recovery there. So, and she's the front runner as of the time that we're recording this. But it's North Carolina politics, so things can change. All right, well, let's move on to the other big newsmaker that's a Republican in D.C., and that's U.S. Senator Thom Tillis, who has a book coming out, which seems like it's going to have a lot of interesting commentary in it. Tell us about that.
I hope so, but every time I think that about whatever author in DC is writing something, I feel like they don't have as much scandal as I want in the book, or as much, revelations as I want in a book. He wrote a book, How to Lose Friends and Antagonize Presidents. The book is interesting. He's on the cover, but he's on the cover with Stephen Miller, who is his absolute nemesis. He's deputy chief for the White House. Went to Duke. I always forget that. He went to Duke. And then you've got Kristi Noem, Pete Hegseth, and there's a third person who I can't remember, but they're all people that he voted for confirmation to be on the president's cabinet, and now he's kind of turned against. He's calling Trump's biggest supporters maggots, which is spelled M-A-G-A-T-S.
I've seen that typed out, and I guess I didn't think about what it sounds like. So
yeah, they're maggots.
Okay, he's not pulling any punches.
He's not pulling punches. And that's what's interesting about Senator Tillis writing a book is he's one that doesn't hold back, except when it comes to the president. He usually says that it's President Trump's advisors and the people around him that are messing up the country and the Republican Party. He doesn't take shots at the president typically. I do find it interesting that in his title he is, saying I antagonized a president. So that will be curious. But yeah, I want to read it. I've had a lot of people say they don't want to read it, and I've had some people saying, if you didn't vote for Todd Blanche this weekend, I would have bought your book, but now I'm just mad at you.
And this comes out around October surprise time, right?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the second-ish week of October, so it'll be 2 weeks before the election, which is interesting in itself. One thing to note about him particularly is he's saying he's not doing any of this to make the Republican Party look bad. He wants Republicans to win, and he wants information out there to maintain the party. I don't think he likes the direction the party's headed, and he blames the advisors of President Trump around that. And so, I think the timing of the book is interesting.
We'll see the future of the Republican Party and how things go. The selection. All 170 state lawmakers in the General Assembly are on ballots in November. And they are back in their districts campaigning again. I should mention that the House just wrapped all the action they're planning until after the election. The Senate came back a week earlier and did the same thing. There are 6 bills sent to Stein's desk, which we don't know if he's going to take action on Monday. 2 are budget technical corrections, including things that aren't technical or corrections, that shift more power away from Stein, takes Secretary of State Elaine Marshall off a board. And then there's some other, like reducing the number of cuts in some places, adding funding in other places, and those are 2 different bills. And then there's 2 elections bills, one that Stein has already said he's going to veto, and there's the bill that judges can be suspended without pay while under investigation, and then reg reform, which includes a provision allowing more accessory dwelling units. So those are the 6 bills that I guess I need to get working on our pre-writes for when Stein takes action. That's where we just write all the background stuff, since we've already been covering the bill, and then add what happened. So, all right, well, let's move on to our picks for headliner of the week. Danielle, I'll start with you. Yours is a federal, some kind of state crossover.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Senator Ted Budd. He's been a little spicy in the last couple days. There is... To make this, put a bow on it and make this as quick as possible, basically, there is hemp legislation that was going to be stripped out of a federal bill that basically would have had protections against marketing towards children. Senator Budd is very mad about this. He wants to make sure that children are not marketed with hemp products. He basically said, I'll die on this hill. So he tried to make sure that that wasn't stripped out of the amendment to protect kids, or out of the continuing resolution, which is a budget bill. He lost this vote. I think it was 60-41. Which he ended up voting no on himself because he can bring it back up later. But, this is one of the times we know he went up against the White House on it. President Trump called him about it, told him not to mess with him, basically. The bill itself touches his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, because her son-in-law has a hemp business. And so there's probably some, something there that is affecting this. But Budd said he would not back down on this particular issue. He wants to make sure that North Carolina and the United States children are protected against being marketed hemp.
Okay, we'll see what happens with that. Of course, the hemp bill, there was a lot of flurry in the House this past week about passing the local or state legislation, and that didn't come to fruition, but we'll see what happens when they come back in November. There are also placeholder dates every month, so Speaker Hall and Senate Leader Berger could decide, wait, we are going to come back for that date, and I think there's one later this month and the other months, but probably not. So if anything that Stein vetoes this week are just going to wait around in the veto garage until after the election before Thanksgiving. All right, my headliner of the week, I guess I'll say, because it's twofold. The House held a ceremonial session in the historic state capitol building, which still is a state historic site. You can go check it out. It's very cool. It's in the center of downtown Raleigh, built in 1840, I want to say. Anyway, sometimes it needs some sprucing up, and the dome was replaced a couple of years ago. And if you remember, if you look at people's file photos where the dome is that blue-green, it's not that color anymore. That's what happens over time with copper. It's back to the brown. Eventually, it'll turn to the blue-green again. So at the time, Legislative Services Officer Paul Coble, who was in charge of that project, said that they planned to take the copper and turn it into something that people could buy. That has happened. And in the past, you could get jewelry in the History Museum from when they replaced the dome many years before that. But this one, they have ornaments. One's a little copper disc that has the Capitol on it, and one's cut out of the Capitol. Yes, I bought them. So
I want one.
It's pretty cool. It's part of our, I'm the person for all state government buildings. But the ceremony too was really interesting, and that was my other headliner. And Representative Becky Carney told this really great story during it, where when she was in junior high, she would cut through the Capitol grounds to get home with her friend. And sometimes they went into the Capitol, and then the sergeant at arms. So this was the legislative building opened in the early 60s. So this is before that then. And they said, why don't you, she said it was either security or sergeant at arms, said, why don't you come up and see what they're actually doing? And she came up to the gallery and looked down, and it was, of course,
cool.
Mostly one demographic at the time. And they're all smoking, and she said, and spitting, and these like their tobacco and cans of stuff. So there's no smoking on the House floor anymore. But I thought that was really good.
Is there spitting?
Anecdote. Maybe. All right, so we're out of time. Be sure to read newsobserver.com for all of Danielle's latest coverage on what's going on with the congressional race and all the other races we have going on this fall. For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan with Danielle Battaglia and producer Kevin Keister. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.